Good morning, folks. I'm Steve Buckingham, a member of this congregation, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to lead today's service. Carl asked me to do a workshop on how to talk to people on the other side of the political spectrum, and that'll be after this service. I'm a lifelong UU and a political, social activist and student of religious, political, and social history. In 2005, I helped found Maryland's UU State Action Network, the UU Legislative Ministry of Maryland, and I've been in leadership ever since. Volunteer. Since 2020, I've run Maryland's statewide UU The Vote on behalf of UU Legislative Ministry, and that year I wrote a book about how to talk to people who don't vote. It's actually still on Amazon. Very short book. I've participated in outreach efforts aimed at engaging political opponents, and I've taught others how to do it successfully. On October 21st, I gave a sermon here called Crossing the Great Divide, which addressed the same subject as today, and what I said then remains true today, and if you're interested, you can find it on our sermon archives, both audio, video, and text. So this is actually part 2 of the Great Divide, and it goes further to provide background on why people have differing political views, since it's important to understand where these attitudes originate. We'll also focus more on how to talk to friends and family whose politics differ from ours. And if you stay for the workshop, you'll get some practical advice and some practice using some proven techniques. First, we start with some frequently asked questions, things that we've heard a lot about. How can people believe lies, propaganda, conspiracy theories, etc., that work against their own interests? How can religious people vote for candidates who violate their religious beliefs? Are they all hateful bigots? Is this all due to racism, sexism, etc.? Can I have a normal conversation with blank, family member, friend? Why are people so angry when they talk politics? And back in 1992, after getting brutally beaten by the police in LA and riots ensued, Rodney King said the proper question, can we all get along? We hope to address these questions and others today. And first, we're going to talk about assumptions that we make about why people vote and think the way they do. First is, most people have some understanding of the political system, politics, and parties. According to political scientist Rachel Beitkofer, up to 80% of Americans follow politics only casually or not at all. Half or more of eligible voters sit out our most consequential elections. Tens of millions of Americans admit they just don't care, or believe that both parties are corrupt, or worse, that their participation won't make a difference, even as American politics has become a round-the-clock blood sport. So remember that a person you may be engaging in a political discussion may not be interested, may think politics is bad or useless, or may be much more ignorant of current events. Next, people make political decisions based on economic self-interest. Nope. According to an Italian Marxist philosopher and communist politician, Antonio Gramsci, economic interests are not primary. If they were, every worker would be a socialist. In the book Loathe Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks, he writes, moral arguments beat economic arguments every time. Because whether we're liberal or conservative, we are all moral creatures who are encoded to value compassion and fairness. And this takes us to the next assumption. There are common understandings about what is right or fair. Sorry. A good rebuttal to this belief can be found in Arlie Russell Hochul's Strangers in Their Own Land, Anger and Mourning on the American Right, which is a sociological exploration of the emotional and cultural roots behind the political attitudes of conservative voters in Louisiana. It is not about facts, but about feelings of loss, unfairness, and displacement. Her subjects see themselves as waiting patiently for the American dream, working hard, not getting ahead, only to watch others, minorities, immigrants, government workers, etc., cut in line through affirmative action, welfare, etc., violating their sense of fairness. This is the origin of the victim mentality. Oliver Anthony, in today's Prelude, not one of my favorite songs, complained about rich men north of Richmond in Washington, wherein he wrote, "I wish politicians would look out for miners, coal miners, not just miners, children on an island somewhere." It's actually part of a conspiracy theory. "Lord, we got folks in the streets and got nothing to eat and the obese milking welfare." That's what they're talking about in Hochul's book. People getting ahead by government handouts. Arthur Brooks identified two different ways of viewing fairness. Liberals tend to believe in redistributing fairness, which holds that it's fair to redistribute rewards proportional to our needs. The game is rigged, and so you have to redistribute wealth because the rigging is inherently unfair. The second is called meritocratic fairness, and that's what the conservatives hold to, which holds that fairness means always matching reward with merit. You should only get what you earn, nothing free, and you should not be able to take away something that someone else earns. That it's inherently unfair as theft of the fruits of one person's labor to benefit another, robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's their worldview. The next is people disagree with me are being irrational. It sure looks like it sometimes. Hochul's analysis suggests that her Louisiana subject support for deregulation and conservative politics is not simply irrational, rather it's a form of emotional self-protection, a way to maintain dignity and self-respect in the face of economic hardship and political marginalization. These narratives help them come to terms with their circumstances. It's not irrational. Now, before we call conservatives irrational, we should recognize that liberals, too, can be irrational. According to cognitive linguistic professor George Lakoff, many liberals took courses in fields like political science, economics, public policy, and law. They implicitly learned a worldview from the Enlightenment about reason itself, a worldview that is at odds with the scientific facts from cognitive and brain sciences. They learned a centuries-old theory of rationality that though it's conscious, that thought is conscious when it's actually mostly unconscious. That it works by logic, that people all have the same logic, and which is supposed to be what makes us rational animals. And as a consequence, it should be true that if you just get facts out to people, they will they will reason to the right conclusion. And so year after year, decade after decade, liberals keep telling facts to conservative audiences without changing many minds. This behavior by liberals is itself a form of science denial. The denial of the cognitive and brain sciences. It's simply irrational behavior by many people very proud of their rationality. Party membership often becomes a person's identity, creating deep loyalty. Ding, ding, ding. According to Lakoff, conservatives and progressives typically support opposite policies because they have opposite worldviews, opposite notions of right and wrong, moral worldviews that are important to people, part of their self-identity. People tend to think of themselves as good and moral, not taking into account there might be an opposite view of what is moral. And social psychologist Jonathan Haidt writes, once group loyalties are engaged, you can't change people's minds by utterly refuting their arguments. The facts don't work, folks. Thinking is mostly just rationalization, mostly just a search for supporting evidence. Multiple factors contribute to political beliefs. This is Arlie Russell's Strangers in Their Own Land. It's a great book, worth reading. There are many factors and books that approach this subject, and all have merit. We've already talked about the first three: degree of knowledge about politics and policies, different definitions, what's right or fair, parties and interest groups, the vested interest in winning. The fourth and fifth ones, political environment in particular regions. I could do a whole sermon on that one. And communication styles, even within families. I will say one thing about regional differences. Our denomination developed in New England, what the author of the great text on it calls Yankeedom. And according to the author, what would cause Yankeedom eventually to be so loathed by the other regions was its desire, in fact, its mission, to impose its ways on everyone else. We would do well to avoid acting in this manner when talking to people from other parts of the country. You probably know more about your own family dynamics better than I, but you should think of them before engaging. So today I'm going to talk about the last two, which I believe are critical to being better prepared for people with different outlooks and political beliefs. An important determinant of political outlook has been identified as alternative moral systems, often created by family upbringing. Not always. In moral politics, George Lakoff writes that Americans' political ideologies are rooted in deep, often unconscious moral frameworks. What we have are two different forms of family-based morality. Political reasoning is not primarily logical or issue by issue, but instead structured by metaphorical models of family life that shape how individuals understand morality, society, and governance. Each side fails to appreciate how fundamentally different the other's worldview is, leading to miscommunication and mutual suspicion. Lakoff contends that Americans conceptualize the nation as a family, with government as a parental figure and citizens as children. This metaphor underpins two distinct moral worldviews that drive the ideologies. Conservatives are guided by the strict father model. It emphasizes authority, discipline, and self-reliance. The father's the moral authority over the mother and the children, etc. Children learn right from wrong through discipline. Moral strength and punishment for disobedience are central. Political implications, they favor tough law enforcement, limited welfare, strong defense, and personal responsibility. By contrast, the liberals are guided by the nurturant parent model, which emphasizes empathy, care, and open communication. Both parents nurture and support children's growth and happiness. Morality is rooted in empathy and social responsibility. Political implications supports social welfare, environmental protection, inclusive policies, and cooperation. One important feature of conservative thinking: the highest conservative principle is the maintenance of conservative authority. Maintenance of conservative authority. The preservation and support and extension of conservatism itself. This explains the curious tendency to oppose policies that were championed by conservatives once progressives seek to enact them. Obamacare came from Romney Care, right? In Massachusetts, Republican governor. Loyalty to the moral system can be used to defeat individual conservative policies in order to deny progressives a win. That's the top, is preservation of authority by conservatives. The other question is fear. In a great book called Prius or Pickup, good symbols for the two sides, right? Two political scientists known for their influential research on the psychological roots of political polarization, Mark Hetherington and Jonathan Weiler, posed 4 questions. You see it on the slide. 4 questions about child rearing that tell us whether they believe children should have lots of room to follow their own path, be independent, be curious, or instead follow directions and stay on a straight and narrow, be obedient and respect their elders. So the difference is whether you intend to believe that our lives are threatened by terrorists, criminals, illegal immigrants, and our priority is to protect ourselves, or it's a big, beautiful world out there, mostly full of good people, and we must find a way to embrace each other and not allow ourselves to become isolated. And these authors concluded that of the many factors that make up your worldview, one of the more fundamental than others in determining which side of the divide you gravitate to, your perception of how dangerous the world is. I love those ads that have lights on that go, floodlights that flash when some creature crosses your yard. Those people are afraid. Okay? Fear is perhaps our most primal instinct, after all. So it's only logical that people's level of fearfulness informs their outlook for life. Virtually everyone becomes less invested in abstract democratic ideals when deeply frightened, and more open leadership that promises safety and protection. Opportunistic leaders can gin up fear about a host of issues, making voters think it's better to be safe than sorry, a classical fixed way of thinking, but one that leads to some very dark places. From this, we can recognize that any strategy as basic as appealing to tribalism, fear, and instinctive emotions, which is exactly what some people do, may be devastatingly effective, but it's hardly innovative. The same strategy was used to launch the Third Reich. Fear compels people to act, and compulsion precludes a choice. No argument there, only naked instinct. This also means that productive conversations with right-wing conservatives require understanding their fears and how to build trust before fear blocks the conversations. So what do? How we deal with folks brought up in different moral systems with ingrained attitudes different from our own. First, avoid discussions until you're ready. What Carl talks about, halt. If you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, stop. I would add drunk, but don't be in a bad frame of mind. Don't do it, walk away. Or, if you do, have an exit strategy. Somebody to call you and get you out of the conversation. Second, stay calm. Be gentle. What you project to other people is how they reflect it. They're mirror neurons. People tend to reflect what they see. Be calm, be gentle. The number one thing, listen. We'll be talking about that a lot in our workshop. Listen not to rebut. You know, you're talking with somebody and you think, oh, I can rebut that. I'm thinking how I'm going to respond. No. Listen not to rebut, but to understand. You have to pay attention. Ask respectful questions to learn more about how they think. Practice intellectual humility. Acknowledge, at least yourself, that you may not know everything or may actually be wrong about something. And it's okay to, say, somebody says something, say, yeah, I agree with that. But then use that to make your own point. You don't have to know everything, and the person on the other side might know something. Share personally, not intellectually, about your experiences. You are the expert on your experience. What are they going to say? It didn't happen? Tell your story. Tell what happened to you and why you believe the way you believe. And explain why you hold your beliefs. Don't just say, I don't want to talk. Defend your values. We need to defend our values. And speak in the present tense about your values. I believe this. Ignore the stuff about what nasty thing Nancy Pelosi did or whatever back in the day. Talk present tense about what you believe, and future tense about how you're going to solve problems you both agree you have. And seek common ground. We also have to do some things, stop doing some things that are counterproductive. These are two books we're going to rely on later, and I mean, listen. First, don't take the bait. Folks who want to own the libs or whatever, like to make snarky remarks, ignore them, or maybe even give a non-committal chuckle. They'll wonder what you're chuckling at, what stand you're taking, but don't answer. Avoid anything that could trigger fear or anger. Remember, fear is compulsive and avoids argument. It avoids any discussion. Don't do any name-calling, accusations of bigotry. Don't call somebody a bigot because they make a bigoted remark. That just gets them angry. Avoid confrontation or ridicule. And don't criticize how they voted. They'll think you're stupid. They think you calling them stupid. Sorry. Stop talking about which group you identify with and start talking policies. It turns out America is ideologically conservative, but policy-minded, they're liberal overall. And stop feeding them facts and facts and facts in the belief you will convince them of the truth as you see it. This is about moral views, identity, and emotions. Finally, don't act like an elitist who wants to impose your beliefs on everyone. And lastly, and most importantly, it's a good thing our congregation believes in this, love. Love needs to be at the center. Before you engage, remind yourself that you love your family member or friend and why. It sets your mind state. If you're treated with contempt, change at least one heart, yours. You have the power to control your reaction to anything said. You can't control what they're going to say. Control what you say. Ask questions lovingly, with interest. And if you don't feel love at the moment, that's okay. If you're having trouble feeling lovingly, act lovingly. Seriously, fake it. Now, you have to be authentic. You have to really love them. But use love as a verb, not a noun. It's an act. What we do most often determines how we feel, not the other way around. Repeat that. What we do determines how we feel. So if you act hatefully, you're going to become hateful. So act lovingly. Remember that love is the central you value. Let's use it to counter hate and fear. Thank you. Please rise as you're in spirit or body.